Well, what is going on, everybody? Welcome, everybody, into the Overreaction Buffalo Sports Show, brought to you exclusively on the Overreaction Buffalo Sports Network. Lost you there for a second, Billy. It's so good to have everybody. I am Joe Miller. You can find me on Twitter at Joe Miller Wired, alongside my lovely co-host, former Buffalo Bill Jerry Ostrowski. You can find him at Ostrowski_Big O. We are excited that you are here with us. Like we always say to everybody, please like, please subscribe, do us a favor, share, let people know about this show if you enjoy it, and whether this podcast finds you around a cup of coffee at the gym with your AirPods in, on the drive to work, or watching me live right now. Let me just say one more time, welcome. It's good to have you. Today on the show, on the program, we are joined by Billy Conaty, a former teammate with John and Jerry. Signed in 1997. He played center for the Buffalo Bills and played 6 seasons in the red, white, and blue, most notably in 2001, where he became the starting center for the team, allowing our own Jerry Ostrowski to bump over to guard. Now an attorney in New Jersey and a current NFL agent for former Buffalo Bills player Mitch Morse. Everybody, please welcome Billy Conaty to the show. Billy, how are you doing tonight?
Good. How you doing, Joe? Thanks for having me.
I'm doing great. Jerry O, how are you doing tonight?
I'm wonderful, Joe, because I get to see my friend Billy. And anytime I get to see Billy, that's a good thing, because I know that Billy being on a vidcast or podcast out actually in the public is making him really uncomfortable right now. So I'm all about it.
Is that fair, Billy? Is that fair?
Maybe.
We had some good conversation backstage for the listeners, those that are listening both live and then in podcast form. This is Billy's first live appearance on a podcast. If he listens to it, it'll be the first time he's ever listened to a podcast, and he doesn't have a ton of Zoom experience. So this is like 2024 crashing in on Billy all at once, like bang, like here you are. We've brought you into the new millennium. Welcome to the new millennium, Billy.
Thank you. My kids think I'm old. I'm like, no, I'm young, I'm hip, I'm cool, and this proves that I am old and totally outdated.
Well, when I was on your,
so thank you for having me on.
That's great to have you. When I was going through and just kind of researching a little bit your wiki page, I discovered that you're 3 months older than me. So you just turned 51, and I'll be 51 June 18th in 2 months. So we are So you are young, Billy. You're very young.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah, time flies. I mean, I've known Jerry for a long, long time, and now our kids are all getting grown, and it's wild.
Yeah, I mean, I remember Billy, when he left Buffalo, he went down to Dallas, and then on their way back, he came through Tulsa and stayed with us a little bit. And I think you had just Will, didn't you? And we had just Jackson. It was just, 2 babies, and that was about it.
I think you had Owen. I think Owen, because Devin was there because it was 2003.
Yes,
Before,
exactly.
It was
okay.
January 2004.
Okay, so we had 2 kids each.
Yep, very young. It was just that 2003 I was with the Cowboys, and then just driving back, and the kids and then they know who you are, and I think Will fakes to remember being there, but who knows.
That's awesome. Well, it's great to have you on the show. We got some questions for you. We're going to ask you some stuff just so the listeners kind of know what's going to happen. We're going to keep you for about 25 minutes or so, 30 minutes. We're going to ask you questions just around the draft, some roster construction stuff, maybe get into just some of the relationship with the Buffalo Bills and Mitch Morse and just the departure, which, to be honest with you, you probably are aware Bills Mafia was just as shocked, right, as we know that Mitch was. But before we ask you any of those questions, I have one personally, because I'm not the smartest man in the world, and I did go to college. However, reading was never my thing. And I know to become an attorney, you have to be a reader, but maybe it was the Jerry Maguire movie. I always wanted to be an NFL agent, but I didn't have the ability, if you will, or the drive to do the work like behind it to become something like that. So I think that for me is my first question. How did you get into being a player agent after leaving the NFL? Was it a lifelong dream? Did you kind of fall into it? Did it seem natural? Was it always a plan? Like, how did you end up as an agent?
Well, it kind of was not a lifelong dream, though. I love, just like everyone, loves football, would love to do something around football, but I went to law school right after. So I got done in 2006, finished up with 9 seasons, went to Rutgers Law School, practiced law for 5 years at a big firm in Philly, and got certified to be an agent while I was still in law school.
Mm-hmm.
So I just someone put it on my radar. Maybe you want to do that. So I did it kind of on the side for a little bit, but really wasn't doing much. And then honestly, practicing law was not thrilling. You know what I mean? Being around football, I figured would fulfill me more and would be something more along the lines of, I like you, don't like you, Joe. I don't like reading either, and that's not a good match for a lawyer. So I wound up, I guess 10, 11, 12 years ago, just left and went and joined the agency that represented me when I played, which is called EAS. So the same agents that represented me is who I work with. And so, yeah, that's kind of how it happened, because it's hard when you're transitioning out of football, as Jerry and all the former players know. You don't know what to do next. And I didn't know. And I played till I was 32 or 3 and just didn't really know what to do. And I, for some reason, thought, all right, if you have a law degree, you can kind of do anything. And then transitioned into that, and then was fortunate that got some good clients early on, one of which is Mitch, and it it worked out well for me. So I'm very, very fortunate and blessed that I was able to do this.
Yeah, that's actually one thing that as much as Jerry and John are on this show, and I've been friends with John for almost 5 years and Jerry about 3 years. That's one thing we've never really dug into, is like that. Okay, it's over. Like all I've done my whole life is play football at the highest level now for the last 8-10 years. And what is next? That's got to be an unsettling transition. Jerry, go ahead.
The question I had for you, Billy, is when you and I came out of college and we're moving into, with hopes of playing in the NFL, obviously I think the agent player, it was much more based on relationship. It was much more based on maybe I've got a friend and, just time spent. And now with, even college football becoming such a, what have you done for me lately type of thing with NIL and endorsements and those types of things, how has the player recruitment aspect of being an agent changed in the last, say, 5 years? I mean, obviously, I'd have to think it's kind of difficult.
Yeah, I think it's actually changed significantly. So I've been an agent since 2008, so that's 15, I guess, coming up on 16 years. And kind of like you said, sometimes your buddy would know a guy, and I know, like, my agent I got from my older roommate was represented by him. So it's just kind of, oh yeah, I know this guy and he knows that guy, and it's that. And now, especially the last couple of years with NIL, these college players have agents, like active agents. I was at a pro day and spoke to one of the coaches up at the pro day. And this is it, because I'm in the NFL world. I don't know about NIL that much any more than you guys do, just reading it. I don't get involved in it. But they said that some of these college players who aren't even pro prospects, like they may be down the line, but they're not Caleb Williams types. Mm-hmm. They have agents who will like call head coaches at colleges to try to leverage more money out of them, which to me is crazy when you have these young guys between 18 and 22 with that type of power, which is, I guess it's good for them, but it does kind of change kind of the pool of who you're looking at. Because when you try to recruit these guys, sometimes it's just transactional. They just want to get paid by an agent. They want to get paid by this, where when we were coming up, it was more relationship based. And that's why it is difficult. Probably the most difficult thing of being an agent is finding a player that is like-minded, who you can mentor and kind of teach how to be a pro, and that's not just looking for the flash and kind of the stuff that is outside of football. So that's probably the most difficult thing. And just, I think a little more of social media, young people may have changed a little bit. And I know it sounds like I'm an old guy saying that, but just because there's more in front of them, they have more access to things. So it definitely has changed.
Yeah, real quick. So NIL, for the listeners, is name, image, and likeness. And now in the NCAA, players can now be paid for their name, their image, and their likeness, which has completely changed the landscape. It's funny for the players, the potential to bounce around to schools. I didn't even think about established agents in the NFL. That these college people are now cherry picking. They're getting out in front of the established agents like yourself. So it's for the listeners, NIL, name, image, and likeness.
It's almost kind of become like the AAU shoe deals. A lot of times, players would play on certain teams. They were associated with certain shoes with the hopes of pushing them to colleges that wore the same gear. Now it's almost like you've got agents out that are pre-recruiting through NIL and then pulling those guys to those agencies when they are done their college eligibility, or they decide to declare for the draft. Billy, I did want to ask you this. with the draft coming up this week, I love the draft. It's one of my favorite times of year. I don't know how you feel about it. Obviously, you have a very vested interest, but one of the things that players we used to request, and now they get it pretty much as part of the package, is specialized combine training after college. When you watch the combine now and you see the numbers that are being put up, has this specialized training and science skewed the combine, or is it still a very helpful tool for these teams?
Well, I mean, I think it's a tool, but I think you got to always go back to the film, right? I mean, because you have these combine wonders who are the greatest ever, and a lot of times they don't pan out. So you always have to go to the film. It is a useful tool, but it is and that's the other thing about when you recruit these guys, they all want to train at these great places, which is fine. It just costs a lot of money. Where I know when I was coming out, and Jerry, you just trained at, he probably trained at Tulsa. I trained at my college at Virginia Tech. So, I mean, I don't know. I think just from what I hear from scouts and all, a lot of the combine number stuff, if there's an outlier where you're exceptionally fast or exceptionally slow, that's almost when it makes a difference. Because then they go back to the tape to say, oh, is he really that slow? Or, oh, is he really that fast? So, I think it matters some, but for a prospect, the film is, and just like we played with guys like Doug Flutie, right? Like he wouldn't pass the eye test because he's 5'9". And we played with studs who maybe weren't as good just because, they looked the part, but a guy like Flutie, they wouldn't give a chance, and he wound up being awesome. So, you always think I think football playing is what matters most. Some of that stuff matters a little bit, but you always go back to the film.
Yeah, I like the way that you put that it's, going back to the film and playing football is what matters most. And there's always these measurables. And I've been asked recently, just with Stephon Diggs departing, how do you define a number one wide receiver? What speed, what length, what vertical? And it's not that. There's an it factor to it. And I like the way that you said that. I guess the question that I would have from an agent standpoint, how do you have a board as well when you're thinking about guys that you are potentially going after, or do you just let them come to you? Is it a situation where, oh, that's a big name, we want to try that guy? Because there's a lot of dudes out there. I think of Terrell Pryor. We talked about just the NIL thing. If Terrell Pryor had played in the NIL days, he'd have had 10 or 12 million dollars by the time he got to the NFL, and he was not in any way, shape, or form an NFL quarterback. Anybody that wasn't an Ohio State Buckeye fan could see that this kid is not going to play quarterback at the NFL level. So I think that's a question that I would have for you. How do you have a board? How do you kind of prospect with what's out there?
Well, when I first took the test and got certified in 2008, I was like, all right, so now tell me what to do, NFLPA. Where are all the numbers? Where are all the contacts? And it doesn't work that way. You're on your own. Yeah. So, I kind of just do things at our company. We do it on our own, just self-generating, talking to different scouts and you can look at different lists online of just getting names of, and start kind of big and then kind of narrow it down as you know more about each prospect. And that's kind of how we do it. And, position matters a little bit. I've been very fortunate to have guys like Corey Linsley, who was a center and was at one point the highest paid center. Mitch was once a point the highest paid center. They're both Pro Bowlers. Jonah Jackson just got paid big by the Rams, and he's a Pro Bowler. So, I don't only target O-linemen, but it does seem to shake out that way. So I do try to, get in touch with good O-linemen that, that would kind of match up well.
Yeah.
But it's not an easy process. And you're going to understand how many first round picks are bust. So we're just trying to get in touch with kids to possibly sign a mid-round pick, right? But NFL teams who are great scouts and big departments, half the time they're wrong on the top guys. So it's not easy. So when you get a guy that makes it, you're just happy. And then a guy getting to a big second contract is just great.
You brought up Mitch, so I kind of natural segue into that. Obviously Mitch Morse had, he's having a great career, great center in the NFL, started with the Chiefs, moved on to the Bills. His time this season with the Bills has come to an end. Obviously the Bills release him. He then signs almost immediately with Jacksonville, $10.5 million over 2 years, 7 of that guaranteed. Just kind of give us a quick overview of what took place and what possibly led, or when you might have started having conversations that releasing Mitch from the roster was a possibility?
So just as the season was coming to an end, we talked about it because he was going to have an $11.5 million cap hit net for 2024, and they were $50 million over the cap. So that's not going to stick. They're not going to keep him at that. So the possibilities we thought were you're going to get cut, which happened, or we thought maybe he takes a pay cut, makes $6 million or something, and they kind of spread it out, but. Ultimately, and we didn't get much of a warning. They didn't really. I knew something would happen. Mitch knew something would happen, but there was no warning to it. Just that day, whatever, March 6th, 7th, whatever, they called him and let him know. And, it's just part of the business. I mean, Mitch understands it hurts because he loved it up there. He really loves Josh Allen. Like that kind of broke him up the most, just Josh as a person, honestly. Like, obviously Josh is a great player. I don't know Josh, but Mitch thought so highly of him. He was shook because of all of it, but definitely playing without Josh. Because, that's a possibility, but once it happens, it still hurts. So Mitch was hurt by it, not personal. He knows that it's part of the business. So it took him a little bit, but then we talked about it in advance and kind of talked about next steps even before that, like what possible teams and what possible scenarios he'd like to go to. And it came up like Pittsburgh, the Steelers offered him a little more money, but honestly, he liked the warm weather. I think he liked the established quarterback. Yeah, it's just not because he's, as Jerry, well, all of us know Buffalo can be brutal. Weather-wise,
Pittsburgh's only
going to Jackson.
Pittsburgh's 2.5 hours away from here. Their weather isn't much better. So Jacksonville, much nicer.
I know. My daughter actually is a freshman playing lacrosse at Duquesne in Pittsburgh. So I was like, please, Mitch, go to Pittsburgh. You'll save me a lot of time. That's not true. I didn't want him to go to Pittsburgh just for my sake, but he wound up, having Trevor Lawrence, great, and he knew him from the Pro Bowl. So I think that was part of it, and he just thought he was a good dude. He played for Doug Peterson when he was with the Chiefs, so there was that familiarity. Right. But so it hurt Mitch leaving. He really would have taken a pay cut to stay, no problem. But it shook out the way it did, and that whole process. He has no ill feelings towards Buffalo. When he was a free agent in 2019, and they signed him, which it was funny because I negotiated a deal with Jim Overdorf, who Jerry knows well, with the Bills, who we know forever. So it is a little weird that I've known Jim forever, and then I'm negotiating a deal for Mitch, and they made him the highest paid center in the league, so he can't be too upset by his time there. So it was a great experience. He loves the fans, really enjoyed his teammates, and there's no place like Buffalo. It's great.
Love it.
Billy, I got to ask you a follow-up two-part question. First question is this. If Mitch is 27 or 28 years old and younger in his career, do you think they make this move? And two, was a pay cut ever given as an option before they released Mitch from the roster?
That was my question.
If he was younger, I don't think he could. Mitch is an elite, he's a top center. He showed no drop off. He probably the last year or two had as good a year as he had forever, and he's been as healthy as he ever has. He would always have some kind of cleanup surgery at the end of the year on elbows, ankles, something. But this last year or two, he was fine. So to answer your question, you would think that they would have to find a way to keep him, because instead they kind of half pay a couple guys making half of what he was making and kind of keep them. But, in my opinion, they're lesser players. But, they never – the first inkling I got of it was Mitch calling me, hey, they're cutting me. There was no – they didn't offer him to take a pay cut, no. And,
it was
just –
yeah, it was a wild surprise going. I vividly remember his locker cleanout press conference when one of the questions was something similar to if they have you back, and he's like, "What do you mean if they have?" It didn't even cross his mind, the thought that they would potentially move on from him, and then they trade Ryan Bates, who was the backup, basically guy across the entire offensive line, but the backup center. They didn't play Ryan Bates a lot of time because of the fact that he was the backup center to Mitch, which to me was a detriment to the offensive line many times because there was guys playing in front of Ryan Bates that weren't as good as Ryan. And then the WTF moment happened when they cut Mitch. It was like, how are you cutting the only center on the football team? So I guess the question that I would have kind of with everything that you're saying is, do you have a thought? You're a former center. You played the position. You played on this team, that position. Do you have an idea of what they're kind of going to do this year? Is it like Connor McGovern? Is it David Edwards? Is it one of these guys? Will Clapp? Like who's in that nest that can play center for this football team?
I think it's Connor McGovern with David Edwards is his name, right, from the Rams. He'll be at left guard. It was a little bit of a surprise, but you can't begrudge the Bills. It was a mess, right, with the Von Miller stuff. They've possibly overpaid a few guys. But I think my assumption is Will Clapp would come in as the backup center. The Bills have a history the last 5 to 8 years or 6 years of bringing in, like, instead of going with rookies they don't know, bringing in decent backup players. And like Will Clapp has starting experience. So my assumption is he would back up McGovern and at the center spot. And then I guess La'el Collins and Edwards would compete for the left guard spot, possibly. I'm not sure. But they've always addressed the O-line pretty well and got numbers in there and kind of veteran guys, maybe not always top tier, but maybe toward the end of their careers. But there's little unspoken things you don't know, and Jerry O knows this well, like with the center position, like just the communication with the quarterback, right? How is that going to be with Connor McGovern versus Mitch? I have no idea. It could be wonderful. But those are the things I would think the team would be definitely having to address here in the mini camps and off season, because they have to click. They have to be on the same page. It sometimes takes a couple years for the QB and center to see things the same way and to be able to communicate, even unspoken communication, the same way. So you have a guy, Mitch was there, I think 5 years and with Josh. So they worked together very well and kind of knew where they were going with the protections and the run game. And so I think that'll be the biggest adjustment. Mitch really moves really well in space and he's very strong. So you'll see, like, there's not much push in the middle. There's not many guys in Josh Allen's face. Yep. He can kind of step up. So hopefully the next center can do what Mitch did the way he did. But, I favor Mitch, so I don't know if he will.
I got a question for both of you, both having played center, and this is a topic we've never discussed with Jerry. So you both have played center at the NFL level, and Josh Allen is very much a different quarterback than the prototypical NFL quarterback. There are guys that have played like him outside of structure. But when you look at that landscape, both of you, this is a question for both of you. I'm sure you've thought about it. Like, how much different is it to protect Josh, who basically is going to get outside of structure to succeed, versus a guy, Kirk Cousins, Jim Kelly, that stays in the pocket the whole time? Like, how much, like, Mitch was the perfect guy for that, right? So how have you guys thought? Do you guys ever think about that? I guess is the question that I have.
Well, I do know one thing, and Billy can elaborate on this after this point, but the thing about Flutie that was easy to block for, and Josh is the same way, you just listen to the crowd. So when you're sitting there pass blocking or you're trying, and all of a sudden you hear the crowd go, oh, like the energy comes up, that means those dudes are going off to get ready to do something. So you better just lock on and run with them, because there's probably a good chance they're running past you. But no, it is a little bit different. Like John and I always joke, and John's in the chat. He has a question for you, Billy. I'll ask it at the end. But Jim's famous quote was, "Guys, I just need 5 more seconds." 5 more seconds, right?
5 more seconds.
And Flutie and Josh were very similar in the fact that you just knew you had to stay on your guy because they're going to take off at any moment. Go ahead, Billy.
And then the only other thing I would say is, it can be just, it seems like Josh and Flutie run when they're forced to. You see some QBs running into sacks. They don't need to even run, just as long as they stay up in the – so it is, it's a blessing to have a guy like Josh to escape stuff. You just don't want them running into sacks. That's when O-linemen get mad.
Yeah, for sure.
Billy, you said earlier that Mitch over the last couple of years had some of his best years of his career, and actually, he's actually heading towards the end of his career. Do you think that maybe that was because of Aaron Cromer and some of the stuff that he's teaching? Cromer's been there a few years. It coincides with Mitch's uptick in the success he's had on the field.
Yeah, I think so. I think Cromer's I don't know him, but I think he's a great O-line coach. I know that when he came in, I think it was 2 years ago, if you just look statistically, like they've given up less sacks. Their yards per rush has gone way up. And, and they just seem to be playing more confident and loose up front. And it's essentially the same five guys, essentially. So I think Aaron Cromer's been a huge difference for them up front. And I know Mitch loves him and thought he was great. And just the way he taught, kind of take your time when you're going through like zone steps to go up to the next level. Some guys will rush and kind of miss a guy, but, Cromer really taught it like, take your time, square him up. As long as you're squaring up the defender, the back can make the cut. And whatever it is he's teaching, it seems like the techniques and just whatever confidence he's instilling in the players has really, really paid off, because Buffalo's line was underrated this year. They were really, really good.
Right.
I thought they had a great year, and so he's done a really, really nice job.
And also, too, much different than when you and I played, and Fina obviously is the outlier of this, but that offensive line and who they've been bringing in, taller, longer guys, not super heavy guys, very athletic, second level type of dudes that run real well. So that kind of all fits together very well.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, and they got I think that Spencer Brown will be excellent. I think he's really done a nice job and at right tackle for them. So it'll be interesting to see. Even you talk about cap stuff, like they're going to have to pay guys coming up too with him.
Right.
A guy like him, he's going to need to get paid in, I guess, a year or two. And it'll be interesting to see, because that's, the Bills making all those cuts. Maybe they could have made better decisions 2 years ago and who they signed. But, in retrospect, how do you know? It's hard to blame them. But some of those contracts, and I know Von Miller is a big contract and he's older.
And stuff.
They got a great – it's like, and he tore his Achilles. There's some things there that, you're not counting on, especially the Bills are going for a championship run. Like it's a little similar to 99, Jerry, when we loaded up and still had the older guys like Bruce Smith and them, had you and Fina, the whole crew, and then kind of had to cut bait on everyone. Just everyone was too expensive. This seems very eerily similar to that, just the way he did it. But they still have the quarterback, so they still have the key pieces to win in Buffalo.
Yeah, the claim to fame for Aaron Cromer, getting back to Aaron Cromer and kind of what he's doing, is he's an offensive line coach that's known well for basically taking the strengths of the player. He's not trying to fit a system, like guys to a system, and make them play a certain way. He takes we've talked about it at length here on this program, the FINA program, the awkwardness and the footsteps of Deion Dawkins, and basically says, no, I don't want to change you, be you, but I'm gonna use your strengths and make you stronger. So Aaron Cromer is very good about individualizing, if you will, just at the player level. Talking with Billy Conaty, former Buffalo Bill and current agent for Mitch Morse. So I guess the question is, and John has a question about the draft as well. Are you a draft guy? Do you get excited about the draft? Are you excited for the draft? Are you excited for Thursday night?
Honestly, not really. I mean, it's fine, but because I'll have clients going through it, and just like anyone in the draft, it never ends up as good as you're hoping, right? Like,
right.
You just think of the draft, like the second pick in the draft is pissed he wasn't the first pick. So you think you'd be elated, but everyone, if you're a second rounder, damn, I should have been a first rounder. So, and I came out undrafted, so I wasn't. So that was always a nightmare scenario. It's like reliving trauma of not being drafted. So I am, and I'll pay attention to the guys where I've, positions of guys, but I'm not a huge draft guy. I mean, I watch it all, and I do love it, but it is kind of nerve-wracking.
Yeah. I was going to ask you John's question. John wants to know if you've got guys. Do you have guys in the draft this year?
Yeah, there's two guys. Both would be most likely free agents. One is the center from USC, Southern Cal, Justin Dedich, who's kind of a smaller center, not unlike me. He's 6'2", 295, good player, has guard experience. Some teams really like him. The other guy was a tight end at a Boston College who is excellent, big stud league guy, but he's been he's had like 5 distinct injuries in the last 2 years. Had to come back for a 6th year. Then as he's training for his pro day after coming off a broken foot, pulled his calf. So it's just, I feel so horrible for him. And so, if, as long as he gets an opportunity, sign somewhere as a free agent, I think he'll do a nice job. But yeah, it's always because I relive this every year with every player. So like Mitch was, I think, the 45th or 44th pick. So that was great. But I'm telling you, guys who get drafted in the 5th round, they're not that once it's over, they're happy. And even if you sign as a free agent, you're happy, right? As long as you're on a team and all. But there's just so much stress for these players going into this week. It's crazy because, you might be from Buffalo, New York. Next thing you know, you're in Miami or Seattle or Arizona. It's just it abruptly changes your life, and it's all good. And then once you get drafted, I mean, once you're beyond round 4, you better make the team. They're not keeping you in the 5th round if you're not worth it, if you're not doing good. So there's no guarantee. Sometimes players think, oh yeah, I'm a 5th round pick, I'm good. No, you're not. Like, you got to still make the team.
Right.
Like, that's just the beginning of the journey. The draft is the beginning of it. And Jerry knows this. Like, we've seen guys come in as 1st round picks kind of stink, and then undrafted guys come in and do great. So it's always, it's just part of the long process of hopefully these kids all have a long, prosperous career. But, it is nerve-wracking for them, and a lot of times you got to talk guys off the ledge and just get them to calm down a little, and it's okay. And almost want to distract yourself because during that time, I went through it as a player like Jerry and John and everyone did. You're just like obsessing, watching the thing, and you just want to kind of step away and just kind of think of something else because at the end of the day, it'll work out the way it's supposed to.
Billy, in trying to recruit players, obviously you do kind of recruit offensive line heavy. It's, or those are the kind of guys you seem to get, although you do recruit all positions. Are there a couple centers out there that maybe we should keep an eye on, guys that are your favorite in this year's draft, guys that maybe, I still think the Bills will pick a center at some point in this draft with 11 picks. Now, if they have 11 after day 1, we'll see on Thursday, but anybody out there that you like that you saw in your evaluations?
Well, I know that the West Virginia center is a really good player, Zach Frazier. He may be. I mean, I don't think for the Bills necessarily because he may be in the 1st round or late, or in the 2nd round. There's a kid out of UConn, Chris. I forget his last name. I think it's Watson, but he's going to kick. He played guard at UConn. He's going to kick into center. He's a really good player. The center from Oregon is really good, but I think he'll be like a 1st, maybe 2nd round pick. So there are a few good ones out there. I think after the first few, so I have the guy from USC. Obviously, I'm not talking about him, but yeah, there's a handful out there that are good players that can contribute. And generally, that's the position that gets least drafted, just because there's only one of them. Where they'll draft 20 tackles, they may draft 5 to 7 centers. So it's, and like teams value tackles more. So you'll see guys getting drafted at tackle late that might be prospects that are projects really, but they have some attribute that the teams like that, it's just like the Eagles did with Jordan Mailata. He was a 7th round pick because he was a rugby player, but he's a 6'8" total stud athlete. And now he's a top level left tackle. So yeah, the draft, I don't want to say the draft is bad. It's just a little stressful looking. I love the draft, but it is a stressful time for me, but it is always fun to see these late round picks that develop. And the Bills last year with Dalton Kincaid, that guy was awesome. I thought,
yes.
I thought they did great there.
So yeah, we had a compelling, very compelling conversation with Billy Conaty on the program. Thank you, Billy, so much for just being with us. And we told you 25 to 35 minutes. We're already over 35. So I've got one more question for you. And I don't know the question, and then we'll get you out of here. But so I will pay you money. So John and Jerry are 2 of the biggest goofballs that I have ever met, as far as that goes.
I know.
And I've heard some stories. I want some dirt. Like, give me some like goofballism stuff from John and Jerry.
Hey, great show, Billy. We'll be seeing you later on, and that's Overreaction on Sunday.
I need something to hold against them.
I don't have anything terrible in either one of them. I liked them both. We got along well and hung out, and I do remember having to always do like rookie duties. Like I do remember that, and Fina kind of busted my chops about that. So it was me. You remember Jamie Nails, Marcus Spriggs, was it?
Yeah. Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
that was great.
And yeah, and I do remember, actually Jerry helped me because Jerry probably wouldn't remember this. The first camp or rookie camp or whatever, first time I was even in the building, I sit down. And I'm like, la-di-da, totally scared and seeing Tasker and all these legends. And I'm like, wow, I'm like crapping my pants. And Jerry taps me. He's like, hey, man, just want to give you a heads up. That's Bruce Smith's seat. And I'm like, wait, is this a joke? Like at first I'm like, I don't know if this is the gag or if it really is. Or I didn't know. And I was like, oh, my God. I didn't know whether to believe him. So I actually moved. Sure enough, Bruce Smith sat down there. I was like, all right, man, I like that guy, Jerry O. He just hooked me up. He saved me from getting beat up by Bruce Smith. I don't even know if Jerry remembers that.
I do. Billy was the he was the drive-by Joe. He was the drive-by guy. So like Billy wouldn't say anything for like 3 days, and then he would just on the 4th day, we'd be in there doing something, cut up, and he would blast somebody with the best line that you've ever heard, and then would just keep walking and wouldn't show back up till 2 or 3 days later. But no, Billy was awesome. Billy was a great player, and I just remember. One of the times I remember with Billy was in New York. We were playing the Jets. And I don't know if you remember this, Billy. You're playing guard, and I went and I'm pretty sure it was you. You did play guard in that game, or am I lying?
I remember playing a couple plays at guard at the Meadowlands.
Yes. All I know is I got kneed in the head, and I didn't know where I was. And since Billy played center, all I asked him was, "What's it on?" And he made the call. For a while because I didn't know that. I did not know where I was, but Billy was an awesome teammate. Billy was one of those guys that you need to win championships. I mean, he's always going to be ready. He's always going to, when he's called upon, he will play his best. He'll play hard. He will know what to do, and he'll be prepared. And, that's why Billy played a long time, because he was a very reliable person, and you never had to worry about if he was going to be ready when his number was called. So I enjoyed my time with Billy quite a bit. Now, John Carmen and Halsey, not so much, but Billy, yes. And Chris Ferris, hell no.
That's funny. That's an incredibly gentlemanly story. Tap, tap, tap. That's Bruce Smith's seat. Versus what would be even funnier. Tap, tap, tap. That's Bruce Smith's seat. And it's not Bruce Smith's seat. And he has to get up and leave.
Right. Well, the funny thing is, Billy probably been like, hey, Bruce, man, it's okay, bro. I'm a VTech grad too. Yeah, that it wouldn't matter. Get out of my seat. No. Get out of my seat.
No, I think that's the only reason he did acknowledge me. Just I think because I was a Virginia Tech guy. So
right.
I think I might have said 3 words to Bruce in 3 years.
That's funny.
But
that's funny.
He was a good player, but I appreciate. I never even thought about that. I appreciate you, Jerry.
That's funny.
As John says, Jerry, you still don't know where you are. That's very true.
I'm going to get us out of here. Ladies and gentlemen, you have been tuned in to the Overreaction Buffalo Sports Show on the Overreaction Buffalo Sports Network. For me, for Jerry Ostrowski, for John Fina, we've had the awesome pleasure of having a great conversation with Billy Conaty, former Buffalo Bill and current NFL agent of Mitch Morse and several other players. Billy, thank you so much for being a part of the show. Thank you so much for coming on. Yeah,
appreciate you, Billy.
I would imagine that we would have, maybe after the draft, we'll have you on again just to kind of see your feelings on how the draft shook out, maybe what the Bills did, if there was any surprises for you. How's that sound?
Yeah, anytime. I'm always here. I appreciate it. Now that I know how to use Zoom, we're all set finally.
Awesome. Well, for me, for Jerry, for Billy, for John, everybody, go Bills.
Go Bills.
Go Bills.
Say it, Billy. Go Bills.
Go Bills. Thank you. See you guys.